Hi and welcome to this week's GMBN Tech Show. Coming up on the show this week in news, Canyon Spectral grows a mullet, amongst other things. There's a cool alloy version as well with a few different nifty features. Mondraker 2022 models of the Raise and the Foxy, which is one of their cool trail bikes. There's also an Alchemy hardtail made from titanium, the wonder stuff. The quiz returns and some more regulars for you lot. Okay, so let's hop straight into news because there are loads of images to show you. And first up, we're going to look at some Mondraker bikes. So there's both the Foxy and the Raise. You will see a selection of images popping up on the screen. In fact, here's a Foxy right now. And here's the Raise. Very similar profiles, but the bikes are slightly different. Now, the original Foxy had 140mm travel and it was definitely a trail bike, and they had their dune as the enduro bike. The Foxy now has stepped up a bit. It's got more travel on there. It's between 150 and 160 on the front, up to 170 on their XR model, whereas the Raise is more of a trail bike, running 130 and 150mm. I mean, that's the one that probably stands out more to me. But let's get into the Foxy a little bit. Now, look at this thing. Look at that slender top tube all the way down into the seat stage. Just what a stunning piece of frame design. I'm a huge fan of the Spanish brand. Now, there's loads of cool shots appearing on screen now. So you've got the stealth carbon frame, so it's super lightweight, 150mm travel on the rear with the 160 on the front. Now there's the XR model, which is extreme racing. That's got 170mm fork, so a proper enduro race bike here. Now they have the Mind telemetry system built into these bikes. Now I don't know too much about it. It's app-based, it's exclusive to Mondraker. They have it on a few of their e-bike models as well, and it analyses the suspension, how much you're using, and the settings of which you have it at as well. I'm actually really curious to try it out and just see how well it works. And if anyone out there by chance has got Mondraker new enough to have this system on, let us know what you think of it in the comments actually. Is it like a really good system? Does it compare to things like ShockWiz and TireWiz? Or is it even better? I mean, imagine it's far more complex because of the app-based system on there, making constant adjustments to your settings and things, giving you basically a better base setting no matter where you're riding. So I think it's a really cool system. It's got the Zero suspension platform on there, so arguably a virtual pivot point system. A slightly different though, the shock is compressed from both ends. It's quite unique to their particular orientation. Very neutral system. It's got quite a lot of anti-squat, as in it sits up quite well in the travel. I'd say it's quite neutral, not affected by your pedaling, it's not affected by your braking too much, just a very well performing system. Very progressive back end on these things. You can really hammer them hard and they sort of have really good composure. That's to be said for all of their bikes using that same system, to be fair. Now you've got adjustable geometry and wheelbase on the bikes. So the reach varies from 445mm up to 505 over the four sizes. You can adjust the head angle thanks to head cups that are included with the frame, as well as being able to adjust the head angle from other features on there. So you've got a 64 to 65 degree angle adjustment. Seat angle varies between 75.7 and 76 degrees, so not mega slack, but actually with the whole fit of the bike, it's quite appropriate. 435 to 445mm chainstay, so 10mm length adjustment there. So that's quite a substantial amount of adjustment there. The BB goes from -25 to -30mm, so quite low for a frame, that is. Internal hidden housing guide, so you feed the brake lines straight in, they come out the other end. Nice and simple. Threaded BB, and quite nice actually to see OLED spec on a few of the bikes. Starting to see them creeping in a bit more. We've seen them recently on the show on Common Sale Bikes. Pleased to see them on here actually. I've not spent any time on recent OLED stuff, but it looks really good. And in the past, anything I have ridden has been pretty good, to be fair. What else? 180mm rear rotor mount and a shock mudguard built in, and arguably one of the finest looking frames out there. Beautiful thing. Now there's the Raise. So again, sharing the same sort of stunning visuals to Mondraker. And let's not forget that all of these bikes have their forward geometry system on there. Now, where we are with geometry in today's mountain bikes, we probably would have got there eventually, but we've got to say a huge thank you to Mondraker for going there first. Now, essentially, when everyone was running 70mm stems, they chucked 60mm on the front of their bikes and they reduced the stem length to 10mm. So handlebars were in the same position, but your front end was out way further. So it's a really progressive way of doing it, and they just went straight in at the deep end. Since then, they've elongated the back ends of the bikes, and actually they've taken a stem to 30mm because they found it's got the best trait of bit of balance all round. But really, they were the ones offering reach of about 500mm back in 2013. It's quite insane how far ahead they were in terms of making that leap to the longer bikes. So that's really cool, and also, you know, other bikes are up there today. But the Rays, back to that, says 150 on the front and 130 on the back. Same platform, although the frame is made from their Stealth Air carbon, so it's ultra light. Obviously, it's reflective in the travel it has. Again, full geometry. I mean, the bike itself, really, in terms of travel, that is exactly where I would want to be. Reach is slightly longer, so 455 up to 515mm. I guess because the whole bike is going to be pitched down slightly more. Head angle is 65.5 degrees, seat angle 76.5, chainstay 435, and there's 3 specs. There's RR SL, the R, and the RR models. Really flipping nice bikes, those. Next up, Canyon Spectral grows a mullet. Well, there's one model that's mullet setup, but there's 27.5, there's 29 and mullet options in both carbon and in alloy. So there's lots of different options available in the range now. Now the frame itself looks visually the same, nothing's really changed, just a few hop-up things here and there. So let's go into the alloy version first. So 150mm travel on the rear, 160mm on the front. The cool thing with the alloy one is they've tried to refine a few things on it, giving you the best bang for buck. So the head angle is 64 degrees, so that's effectively what the carbon one would have been like in the slacker setting. And the seat angle is 76.5, which is what the seat angle would have been like in the steeper setting. So you've kind of got the best of both worlds there, slacker and steeper at the same time. It's also got steel threaded inserts for all of the shock hardware, so you're far less likely to damage anything, essentially. And it's 5 and 6mm Allen bolts holding the whole frame together, all of the shock hardware. So really easy to keep an eye on things with a basic multi-tool. So they're really thinking of the end user there and how they use the bike. The CF, which is their carbon fibre frame, so that one weighs 2,600 grams. The geometry adjustment, you've got half degree head angle there and 8mm BB height that you can tailor. And then there's the CFR, which is the factory racing spec, which loses another 300 grams, but it's exactly the same in the strength characteristics. So 3 levels of frame there. There's also the Young Hero model, which is amazing. There's this one here. So this one is 27.5-inch wheels designed for smaller rippers. How cool is that? Wicked little bike. So just a quick run through. So in the AL, you've got the Young Hero, which is 140mm travel, so it loses a bit of travel to compensate for the frame size. 150 on the front, and you get the Spectral 5 and 6 models. They both are available in 27.5 and 29-inch wheels. Then you've got the CF frames. You get CF 7, 8, 8 and 9, so there's 2 8 models. One of those 8 models is mullet only. The other ones are all available 27.5 and 29. And then there's a CFR 29-inch only. Geometry on the bike's head angle 64 to 64.5, seat angle 76 to 76.5, chainstay 432 on the 27.5, 437 on the 29, so proportional to wheel size, and a reach between 410 and 510, so bang on point with modern geometry on bikes. Interestingly, if you look at that mullet setup bike, it has a coil shock on there. It is quite good. You might see a video with me running a coil shock on mine soon, just talking about why you may or may not want to run one on your bikes. Look out for that one on GMBN Tech. Now, one final thing I want to say about these bikes. To get the mullet option, they haven't done a flip chip, they haven't made a different linkage or anything. It's essentially the 27.5-inch back end with the 29-inch front. So when they designed the frames, basically, they made sure everything was cross-compatible. So that's how they achieve it. But you might be thinking, oh, so I could get like a new 27.5-inch rear end, put it on my 29-inch one and run it mullet style and get the benefits of that style setup. Well, you can't, because they're not offering you the back end. Boo. I think we'd all like to see that, wouldn't we? And actually, though, Nukeproof did the same, because a little birdie told me a long time ago, and it wasn't someone from Nukeproof, that you could run the 27.5-inch back end on the 29-inch one. And then, yeah, we started seeing some of the team riders experimenting it, and hey-ho, now you can get the mullet setup Nukeproof. So maybe that's coming further down the line, that you can get the hop-up kit that they offer. I'd certainly like to see that, because I think more options for consumers is better than less. Okay, next up, Alchemy bikes are back in news again, this time with a hardtail. So very different from the Arctos. This is their Argos. So it's a titanium frame bike, or titanium, absolutely beautiful. I'm not sure how many of you may have ridden a titanium frame, but if you ever get the chance, in particular with a hardtail, try and ride one. Not necessarily with a view to buy, just to have a feel of the metal. So it sits somewhere, as you'd imagine, between aluminium and steel. Steel has arguably can have quite a resilience resilient, comfortable ride, depending on the steel. Obviously, if it's made from like girders, it's going to be supremely rigid, but if it's made from like fine tubing like a Reynolds 853, it's going to have a nice springy ride to it. And of course, you can tune the way it rides. Aluminium tends to be, or aluminum, depending on how you spell it and where you're from, tends to have a far stiffer ride, and you can tune the way the bike rides accordingly, and it's very light, but it can be too stiff for some. Titanium sits somewhere in the middle there, but the metal itself is known as a bit of a wonder stuff because it doesn't corrode, and technically, if you have the right frame design for you, it can last you a lifetime, and this could well be one for you. So the name comes from the Apex Trail System in Golden, Colorado. Now, the metal, as I say, can't say enough about it. It's absolutely amazing. And if you can, try and ride a steel frame, like a high-end or a good quality steel frame is going to have a good ride, a titanium frame and an alloy frame. Just try and get your heads around it, because it's interesting stuff. So it's designed around 29-inch wheels and a 140mm fork, as you can see on screen here. It's American made in their own facility. I don't say where it is though, and they don't actually say the grading of the titanium. So I would like to know that, because like most alloys, titanium is an alloy in the way it's used in bikes, and they have mixtures of other alloys in there to change the properties slightly. Titanium is kind of, fair to say, bit flexy as a raw material, so to make it better for working with and make it better for use on bikes and mixing other materials. Now there's 4 sizes on here, and the reach varies from 44 to 501mm, so that's really nice, quite long. 65-degree head angle. I think that's about right, actually. I don't think you want to go too slack on a hardtail. You want to retain that sort of nice agile ride there. 75.5-degree seat angle on there. Minus 60mm BB on there. Pretty slammed, that thing. That's going to go like a rocket round turns there. 435mm chainstays, SRAM and Shimano builds available. Now, interestingly, when it comes to the colour, most brands, when you offer titanium frame, it will just be raw type because it doesn't corrode and it looks fantastic. And I would actually say a lot of the time, why would you ever have a tyre frame painted? Because you want to show it off for what it is. But I say that until I got that hammer, or the glamour, sent to me by Dale from Rolling Dale Cycles, because that was finished by the people, the very kind people, titanium finishing company, who use Cerakote, or I think it's Cerakote the way you pronounce it, and it's essentially a finishing that was developed for use on things like guns. Incredibly tough finish, and they offer their frames in Cerakote, and a number of colours. You can see there's a whole number of rowdy colours there, including like all custom options there. And it's actually really good stuff to coat a bike with because of how tough it is. And if you can make a bike that looks that good and offer it in the colour that you want, it's going to stay looking that good, well, maybe that is a better way to go. What would you have? Would you have a colour in titanium, or would you go for the raw alloy yourself? I still kind of think I might go for the raw, but let us know in the comments underneath. Next up is something totally unfamiliar to me. It's riding boots designed for use in cold weather. So if you're a cold weather mountain biker, I'd actually like to hear from you, because I'm considering making or doing some sort of trip on cold weather stuff, because we're aware that there's, your brakes are affected by stuff, chain lubrication is affected by it, even how your tyres and your suspension feel is affected by the cold. We've never really done anything around that. And hey, I just want an excuse to actually ride a fat bike where it's intended and use some of the cool kit, like these boots. So these are from 45 North. They've got the Ragnarok and the Wolfgar. So first up on the screen is the Ragnarok tool. So they already make an existing one. It's 3.5 inches lower in the cuff. So this one has a 5.75 tool neoprene cuff on there. Boa system, wide aggressive opening on the boot there. Loads of sort of mud traction type sole on it. Basically a heavy duty winter boot, but not just designed for out and out cold. You get away with commuting in this if you live somewhere pretty cold and foul. UK, I'm thinking, could be quite good boots there. $245 US. I don't have pound sterling or euros, but hey, it looks like a good boot, and I know good things about this company. A lot of people say this stuff's really, really good. Next up is the Wolfgar. So this one is for the extreme cold, so I'm probably never ever going to get to use a boot like this myself. Designed for extreme cold, 600 gram Primaloft insulation on there, with aerogel on top of the toe and under the foot, and reflective thermal lining. You may as well be speaking German to me. I have no idea what that means. But it sounds quite good. Sounds like it'll keep your feet quite warm and your toes will stay on your feet. So that's quite good. Removable fake woolen fur liner for easy drying. Removable cleat plate, interestingly. So you can run these with a sort of a panel on the bottom of the boot, which means you can use them with flat pedals, or you can take that off and run cleats in there. Use them on clip pedals. So a proper, legit cold weather boot designed for all mountain bikers really. D-rings on the toes, so you can run a sort of a gator on them and a dual boa on them. $495 US though. What do you reckon? Cold weather gear, cold weather stuff on GMBN and GMBN Tech? We haven't really done it. Can we have some recommendations? Bearing in mind, we're obviously not just going to fly over to Alaska because it's going to be pretty far to get there, but I really know nothing about riding in conditions like that. So any cold weather lovers out there, let us know what you think down there. Okay, so let's jump into some comments from last week. Man, there was a lot of comments. So first up, got an apology and a correction to make. I said Dave Elv's suspension system as SIDI for some reason. It's not SIN-E, it's SIN. I should have known better. I don't know why I said it, to be honest. A couple of people pointed me out on that, so I just wanted to say that. But loads of comments in relation to oval chain rings. I'm just going to go through a few of them, far too many to just read out. So the first one was from Stuart Sellers, and he says, definitely oval. So obviously a fan. Helps with getting over roots and rocks when climbing, particularly when you're in an awkward part of the pedal stroke and getting the power down out of tight corners. So in case anyone's not aware, the thing with oval chain rings is they're designed to maximise your pedal stroke on the weaker part. If you think most people won't necessarily spin a perfect circle when they're pedalling, you might be tempted to like put the power down, and it's going to be perhaps from a midday to a 4 o'clock position, and then it's going to be almost a dead spot. So they accentuate the dead spot to basically give you power back at that point. So I can definitely see how it's going to be advantageous to some people, but it's not necessarily what everyone wants to ride. I mean, I've struggled with this. I'll talk about this in a bit. Next is from Conrad J. Says, yep, gains in power or smoothness of power transmission, not as noticeable at high RPM. This is interesting. If you're riding in a heavy gear, the power transfer is much smoother. I recommend to people with knee pain, less strain on the joints. So yeah, that makes loads of sense. I tend to ride at quite a high cadence. I spin gears quite a lot. You know, I've got friends who really push gears actually, and actually I'm pretty sure a couple of them do use oval chain rings. I'll have to check on that, but that may well be why, and that does make sense to me because you're definitely going to have a bit of a dead spot if you're pushing like that compared to when you're just spinning the gears around a bit more. Deterrent Dubs says, Doddy, I've got a quick question on oval chain rings. Do they have a differing performance between full sus and hardtail? Yeah, I guess they probably will, but it's going to be different on all suspension bikes. So on a hardtail, yeah, because there's nothing on the frame to affect it, so you know how it's going to handle. Full suspension bikes, more than often, certainly more modern frames, tend to be designed around rough chainring sizes. That's mainly because of the anti-squat. So yeah, arguably, an oval chainring could go below or above that as it sort of goes around. I mean, if you look at, I've got one here. This one's an absolute black. You can see the size difference. So I think this is probably a 32. Can't see on here, but that would almost be like a 30 in one direction and like a 34 in the other if that was a 32. So arguably, yeah, you could feel the difference on some suspension bikes, but not all. I don't have an easy way of working that out, but yeah, you probably would be the answer there. But I've got to say, I've tried oval chain rings. I tried that one on my old Nukeproof Mega and on another bike as well. I forget which one, maybe the Neuron or something. But I did some back-to-back riding, and I've got to say, I could feel it the whole time. Probably because the fact I jump between bikes a lot, you know, you don't fully get used to it. So I'm aware that the longer you rode an oval chainring, you're going to get over the sensation of actually feeling it through the transmission. But I don't think I noticed any benefits in terms of power transfer or wheel spinning or anything like that. But perhaps that's just because I've ridden clips for so long that I'm quite tuned into just sort of spinning a circle. But it also might be because of what Conrad said about the high RPM. I run quite a high RPM, so that may well be why it's not suited me. So I've just gone back to round. It's easier because I've got round chain rings on all bikes. But yeah, it's definitely a thing out there. And someone actually asked if I could do a trailside test, but I'm not quite sure how I'd do it, given the fact that I've not felt it. I'll have to have a think about that. I did reply in the comments to you, but I've been thinking about it a bit more since, so I will come back on that. Next up is GMBN is constantly avoiding Alibaba and the Chinese bike revolution. Get what you want, but high quality bikes have never been cheaper. I can compete in the Tour of France or Enduro World Championships with frames and components off Alibaba for relatively cheap. Well, actually, I've been trying to do this for some time, and I've got at home a cheap, like almost like a fake SRAM 1x12 group set, and I actually tried to buy a fork, which was pretty much a fake Fox fork, a frame and some other bits, but we've just had nothing but problems from the vendors trying to actually get the stuff shipped to the UK. The forks were cancelled twice from 2 different vendors. The frame, I don't even know what happened to that. It failed at customs or something, and basically it just took up too much of my time. There was just too much other stuff to do. So yeah, I'm sure you can get some amazing bargains if you're persistent and you pick the right thing. But I will, because I'd actually forgotten until just then, I'll bring that transmission to show you, and we'll have a look at it compared to, I don't know, Shimano or SRAM transmission that we've got here, just to show you the differences, and I'll do some pricing on them. And actually, we need to stick it on the bike. I'd completely forgotten. So we're not avoiding it, there's just many things to do and not enough of us to do all those things. The next one is from Paul Budgeon, who says, "Bit disappointed, Doddy, that you slid right past the bikes are too expensive subject. Come on, let the manufacturers know how we feel." Well, I didn't really slide past it. Like Neil presented that show, I did the following show, saying there was no point sort of going back on what he said. But the truth is, you can get a lot more for money at cheaper price points these days. I think you get better bikes. There's always been an entry-level point where a bike is suitable for off-road use, and it's pretty much the same price point, but you do get more for the money on that. So if we just look at sub 600 quid hardtails, so there's a few on screen now. Vitus, they've got their 29er hardtail, the Nucleus. That's a great bike, really sorted geometry. I went to see those guys recently. If you haven't seen that video, that was actually to see about their full suspension development, but it's a cool video. It's over on GMBN, and it's just down there. The Marin Bobcat Trail, regardless of the fact it costs 525 quid in the UK, it's an awesome looking bike. It's a really cool looking hardtail. And the frame, and the same with the Vitus, both of those frames are worth upgrading the components on over time. So they're ideal bikes to start your mountain biking journey on. Look after the frame, perhaps get some heli tape on there or something to protect the paintwork on there, and there's no reason why you can't work your way up through transmissions and stuff, better wheels, better suspension in time. They're great frames. Again, there's Caliber, there's Saracen, Specialized Rock Hopper. That's not, that's like 400 quid or thereabouts. Hardtail as well, maybe 500 quid. But my point is, those brands do exist, and you can get lots for the money. And again, even under £1,000, you've got Ragley, Common Sail, GT. There's just loads. The bigger problem is probably availability at the moment. So I don't necessarily think mountain bike is more expensive now. There's definitely lots more availability. There's lots more options of ridiculously expensive bikes, and I'm not suggesting at any point here that a 10 grand bike or even a 6 grand bike is great value for money. It's really expensive. Yes, it is expensive, but there's also bikes at great price points out there. You've just got to look to see what suits you. But like I said, the bigger problem really at the moment is there's just still availability problems at all levels. And yeah, that is a bit of a problem. So, and if you're wondering why you probably don't see more cheaper bikes, just think about TV here for a minute. I'm going to use Top Gear as a bit of an analogy for this, right? So when you're watching Top Gear, more often than not, the car features in there, unless it's like a comedy feature or an archive one where they'll be picking something old and nostalgic, they're going to pick like a really high-end car. And we all know that none of us are really going to afford those cars. And we don't even want to aspire to buy one, but it's entertainment, and you look at the car and think, oh my God, that thing is insane. I wonder what that feels like. It's the same thing. It's all about aspiration. Doesn't mean you need to go and buy that stuff. I mean, I've got a battered up second-hand old Audi estate, and the thing's probably not worth £1,000. It's absolutely knackered. But I'm still going to look at an Audi R8 that drives past and think, wow, look at that thing. Doesn't mean I want one. Doesn't think I think it's good value for money. It's kind of how the world goes round. But that said, we probably should do some more with cheaper bikes because there's no reason not to. So I will come back on that. Next one from Mark Wooder. In fact, the last question this one is, not even a question, it's gone into question here from comments. He says, if I had a budget of £5,000 for a mountain bike, would you choose a high spec trail over an entry level enduro, blah, blah, blah. Actually, I'm just going to ignore this and go in here on how I would actually buy a bike. If you got £5,000 or £4,000 or even £1,000, don't be lured into the components on a bike. The most important thing when you're buying a bike is the frame is good, and then if it's got suspension units on there, see if it's got the best suspension units for the money. The rest of the stuff pretty much are consumable parts, not including the bars, the stems, stuff like that. The wheels, you're going to knacker them as you go around. The tyres, you're going to wear them out. The transmission is going to wear out. The brake pad's going to wear out. All of that stuff can be upgraded slowly, bit by bit. But if you've got duff suspension or you've got a really poor quality frame to start with, then you're not going to get anywhere. So when you're buying a bike, the best way to do it is to look for the best frame possible, and then on top of that, try and get a different shock absorber or a better shock absorber for the money, because replacing those aftermarket is very expensive and almost not worthwhile. Sometimes it's better to upgrade to a new frame where you get one on as part of the frame. And the same goes to the fork. So that's what I would say on that matter. Okay, quiz time is back. Right, 3 questions coming at you on the screen. Now, you might have to think a bit harder this week. So, first question. 45 North, as I referenced in news, they make gear, a lot of gear actually, for extreme cold riding. Name the original extreme cold weather multi-day race held in Alaska. And I'm not suggesting I ever want to go near this place to go and do this, because this is too wild, but name it if you can. Next one. Mondraker Bikes, also referenced in news, they launched forward geometry in 2013. They had 2 ex-World Cup downhill races behind it. Name them. And the last one, titanium bikes have a number with the frame tubes like 3AL 2.5V. What does that mean? I'll come back to you in a bit. Okay, now we've also got time for some top mods. So this is all about the modifications you make to your bike. It could literally just be changing the handlebars for some wider or narrow ones, or it could be a whole paint job. What have you done to your bikes to make it better? Let's see. There's a link right here and there's another one right down there. Send us some pictures, tell us about yourself and your bike and what you've done to it to make it more suitable for you, or just nicer, whatever it is, it all goes. So, first one is from Chris, and the bike is a Head Seek, and he's in Western Unitas. It says the rear straps for holding the bike rack on the frame would go on top of the shifter cable. Obviously didn't want to do. So I replaced the existing cable with one with housing all the way from the shifter to the derailleur. Yep, that's ideal. That lets it move away from the frame where the rack needed to go. The existing cable route is designed for going from the cable inside the housing to outside the housing, so I drilled those out so it'd hold the housing all the way through. Yep, great way to do. And in fact, it's also a really good thing to do if you ride in poor climates, like wet conditions like us. One constant piece of housing rather than several sections of it is far less likely to sort of get water in the system. So it means it stays smoother for longer and your gears will work better for longer. So that's a good winter hack. But you don't have to go as far as you have in drilling it out, but I do like that. Very functional, works nicely. Frame protection tape was used under the straps and then below to keep the rack from slipping down the frame. Hey, that's a great mod. It's a simple mod, but you've taken your time with that, and yeah, it just means everything's going to work nicely all together. Looks like you must do some serious miles on that thing with the racks and stuff on there. It's good, neat work. Okay, next one. In fact, this one is a great example of why you should start off your mountain biking sort of journey with an entry level or a sort of a good value hardtail. This is one on screen. So this is a Norco Charger XL, and it's in Buckinghamshire in the UK, and it's from Alex. In 2018, I bought a run-of-the-mill Norco Charger to get back into mountain biking. I did loads of it when I was younger, and life just happened, so I didn't carry on. I started getting better and pushing the bike harder, mainly around the Surrey Hills trails, after which it probably started needing more and more maintenance and things started falling apart. I got hold of a Nukeproof Reactor RS 2021 somehow for the more trail bike rides, and the hardtail got forgotten about for a while. I decided at the beginning of this year, after not being able to get hold of a new hardtail for cross-country riding, to rebuild this one from the ground up. So I drilled the frame out for internal dropper post, which was cool, and it's professionally repainted in BMW Frozen Black. That's quite a tidy paint job, that, minus the matte finish. And then you've completely gone to town on the spec. I mean, there's a whole load of shots on screen here. And look at the before and after. So before, perfectly nice hardtail, to be fair. It's like a decent bike. But after, it literally is a different bike. So Hope Fortis 23 wheels, Hope Tech 3 E4 brakes with 183mm rotors, Hope BB, Hope headset top. You like your Hope stuff, don't you? You a friend of Martin Ashton? See you on the payroll with him. Race face effect, 170mm cranks, Pacific Northwest 125mm dropper post and lever, Nukeproof Sam Hill 780 bars, Nukeproof 60mm stem. Man, look at the thing. It's absolutely dripping with stuff. Awesome. What a job you've done there. And that paint job does look really good, actually. It looks like, well, I mean, it's about as professional as it gets. It's good to sit in this, documenting the sort of journey. It's nice, isn't it? Kind of like your own little grand design. I like it. It looks good. Nice to see the graphics back on there as well. Like, it looks like factory finish. Good paint job as well, and like the sort of the orangey, bronzy colour of the Hope gear really jumps out. Nice pike on the front. Awesome looking bike. That's a great bike. I fully intend on having a hardtail again at some point. I haven't had one for a long time, but all good stuff. Keep them coming in. Okay, now it's time for some quiz answers. So the first one was 45 North, mate gear for extreme cold riding. Name the extreme cold weather multi-day race held in Alaska. Do you get it? Well, originally it was called Idita Bike. So there was the Idita Rod race, which was the sled dog race. Then there was, I forget, there was another one, but it's now known as Idita Sport, but we'll take Idita Bike. And Idita Sport is open to ski, if you're like a cross-country skier, or a madman for going that duration, sled or bike. To be fair, you're a madman doing it on bike. I think I'm right in saying when it was first unveiled, it was only 200 mile event, but the bigger one is like 1,000 miles, and it's I think on Idita Rod it takes something like 18 days to do it, and a lot of people have not made it. Pretty gnarly event. Mondraker Bikes launched Full Geometry in 2013, and they had two ex-World Cup racers behind it. Do you know who they were? Well, Fabian Burrell was the team racer riding the bikes for the time and had all of the feedback from all his years of like refining bikes, and that with his mechanic Paul Walton previously. And the designer was Cesar Rojo. And Cesar Rojo is also behind Uno Bikes, and he's designed some bikes for Intense and other people as well. And the combination of those two made some bikes with, well, they made one of the biggest gambles ever, and it really paid off because their bikes with the geometry arguably influenced the entire industry. And next up, titanium bikes have a number with the frame tubes like 3AL 2.5V. What does it mean? Did you get that? Well, it refers to the other alloys that are present. So the titanium alloy used in frame tubing is an alloy, therefore it's got a mix of other metals in there. So 3AL means it's got 3% alloy in there, and the 2.5V means it's got 2.5% vanadium in there. And it's essentially, they can't just use the raw state titanium. It's very difficult to work with as it is, and it has, inherently it's got a bit of flex about the metal. So they're fine-tuning the properties to make the optimal ride you can get from that metal. It's very cool stuff. And also, apparently, so titanium takes its names from the Titans of Greek mythology, famed for their legendary strength, twice as strong as aluminium and half the weight of steel. Well, there we go. And that's the end of this week's show. Let us know what you think. See you in the next one. Ta-ra!